Alrighty, so there was another teen takeover, this time in Chicago. I get to work today, and one of my coworkers, who's also a Christian, he comes up to me and he's talking to me about it. And I had no idea what he was talking about because I hadn't heard the news yet. So I looked it up for myself, and there it was. I'm like, man, this is crazy, Now, supposedly, this may have been not a traditional teen takeover, according to ABC Chicago. This may have been an after party after a prom. But still, though, 5 police officers were hit by an 18-year-old who just went through the crowd with his car, which is really crazy. And what this story reminds me of, whether this was a teen takeover or a prom after party, whatever this was, it's a really unfortunate situation, especially these 5 police officers who were hit by this 18-year-old vehicle. But one thing that this situation reminded me of was something that my mom always taught us. When the party is over, you just leave the scene. Okay, it's understandable that people want to go out and have fun and stuff like that and have a good time. We've all made mistakes and things like that throughout our lives, but it becomes a whole nother ball game. When you have a large gathering and you're out there causing, chaos, or you're disrupting the peace of neighborhoods and things like that. You're running over police officers. It's just uncalled for. It's just a lesson that I learned, going to a couple of parties when I was younger, and that's when things always jump off. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes things can jump off in the midst of a party or in the midst of a celebration. But, when things are over, just leave the scene, and I think another good point in all of this is you got to be careful where you go, as a young person. You got to be careful who you're hanging out with, because not to say that everybody who was a part of this takeover or this prom after party or whatever this was, it's not to say that everybody involved was criminal or was guilty or anything like that. But sometimes you have to look at things with a different perspective, not just for yourself and things like that, but think about what other people will be thinking. Now, even though this happened at 2, 3, 4 in the morning, okay, you just got to imagine, say you're out and about, with your family, you got your wife and your kids with you, and you're downtown Chicago somewhere, or you're in some other city, whatever, and you just going about your business, you just enjoying the day, going out to eat or something, and then you see this random huge crowd of people, 100 people, 200 people, 500,000, whatever. And it's no explained reason why all these people are gathering around, or why all these people are congregating together. Now, me, as a father, as a husband, my first thought is going to be, okay, especially if I'm with my wife and kids, my first thought is going to be, okay, how am I going to protect my wife and my kids in this situation? Because I don't see any reason why X amount of people are in this area right now. It's not like it's a stadium somewhere, a concert is being let out, or some type of big event is being let out, or something like that. It's just a lot of random people out here. And then on top of that, not all of them, but some of them are being disruptive, doing inappropriate things, twerking on cars, just a whole bunch of ignorant things. And not everybody, I'm gonna keep giving that disclaimer, but you got to imagine how other people are seeing it. And then you got to imagine how police officers are seeing situations like that, because they know that those types of things can be a possible threat to people, to people's neighborhoods, to businesses and things like that. I was in a kind of a certain situation, well, a similar situation many years ago when I was, 18 or 19, with some police officers. And you have to realize that the police officers have a certain perspective. They want to protect the peace of society and things like that. It's their job to enforce laws, enforce rules, and all of those things. So whether you're guilty or not, and you have, or you're up to no good or not, and you find yourself a part of this big group of people, during these takeovers or whatever they're called, you got to know that, man, you could be a part of that too. You don't want to mess around, get arrested, or have something happen to you, get beat up, or have something random happen to you. I've been a part of that, unfortunately, and it's not cool. You just minding your business, and before you know it, you getting beat up or jumped on or robbed or whatever. Like, man, that stuff is not cool, y'all. Like, for real. So I hope that these teen takeovers I hope that they can come to an end, really. I mean, I get that people want to have fun. I don't understand the mindset behind the takeovers. I really don't. The only thing that I do understand is that people want to have fun and things like that. I get it, you know, but when you're being disruptive, when you're doing something criminal, you're hitting police officers, you twerking on cars, twerking on cop cars, banging on people's cars, walking on top of people's cars, disrupting people's neighborhoods in the middle of the morning, 2, 3 in the morning. People are trying to sleep, they got work in the morning or whatever. You know, that's where it becomes an issue. You know, you got to just be careful who you associate with and things like that. You know, one of my coworkers is here jamming, man. It made me lose my train of thought, kind of. You know, you can hear his music through the truck. But man, what was I about to say? Hopefully, I don't get a copyright thing with this dude's music playing in the background. But yeah. Anyway, man, I was gonna make another point until he pulled up with this music blaring, distracting me. Yeah, but yeah, you gotta be careful who you associate with. You gotta watch out because you don't want to be innocent and then something ends up happening to you. You know, but not all. That's what it was. Now, I don't agree with everything that Mayor Brandon Johnson supports, but he did make a good point. Now, I read the article about this on ABC Chicago, I believe, and one thing that Brandon Johnson said that I agree with, he said that, hey, I know where my kids are at a certain time of the night. You know, you can't place all the blame on the teenagers. You know, in other words, where are the parents? What are the parents doing? You know, what part do they play in this? And should they be fined? Should they be penalized? Should they have jail time? You know, if their child goes out there and tears something up or runs over police officers, hurts somebody, damages somebody's property, you know, so there's talks about that going on. I don't know if Illinois is going to pass a law or whatever on that. I don't really know. That's a tough one right there, because when you have a young teenager, 18 years old, 17 years old, 16 years old, yeah, they can be held liable for that. They should know better, obviously, you know. But then at the same time, if the parent is just at home, well, never mind. I'm not even going to mention that. You should know where your kids are. I was about to try to justify that maybe they just don't know where their kids are, but you should know where your kids are at. You should know what they're up to, who they're hanging out with, you know. So yeah. There's really no excuse for that. I mean, I know some kids are just rebellious. They go out and do things that oppose their parents, that go against their parents' words and goes against their parents' rules and stuff like that. But yeah, you know, so that's where it gets sticky at. I'm not all the way certain about that one, you know, in regards to charging the parents with certain crimes that their child did, or giving them fines and stuff like that. But I do think the good thing about it, if that does happen, you know, I think that it would really make adults, parents think twice. Okay, maybe you're away from the house, maybe you got to work or whatever, maybe you're out of town on business or something, but hey, look, if you go out, you better behave yourself, because I don't want to come back to no fine. I don't want to come back to no jail time, no penalty or whatever. So I don't know, but we gonna see, you know. So he did have a good point on that one. You know, people got to watch their kids. People got to be responsible for their kids. Why is your kid out at 2, 3, 4, 5 in the morning? Good point. You know, so let me know what you guys think in the comments. Hopefully this stuff can come to an end. I don't want to see more police officers get hurt. I don't want to see people get hurt. I don't want to see people's neighborhoods being disrupted and things like that. So feel free to hit that subscribe button, you guys. Peace out. Have a good one. Have a safe one.